Video games. A medium so vast that in history so many amazing works of art have fallen through the grasps of the general public. Whether it being due to oversaturation, disinterest, or the fact the games were really shitty. But, ever since a young age, I've had a certain affinity for the total wash-ups, cult classics, and utter shit of the gaming world. Call of Duty? No thank you. The DS Battlefront game? Sign me up! Today's game is quite possibly one of the best games of the PlayStation 2's glorious lifespan. Released in 2002 as Gigantic Drive and worldwide as Robot Alchemic Drive, or commonly abbreviated to RAD, is a game by Japanese developer Sandlot. They are also the masterminds behind the game series I love to this day, Earth Defense Force. This game is extremely rare now. My friend, who's the only person who I know who loves Sandlot games more than I do, has only found one legit copy in the wild, for a whopping $60. So, unless you still have a copy from 15 years ago, chances are you've only seen the game in this form, or on an emulator. Robot Alchemic Drive is an asynchronous giant robot fighting game that puts the player in the shoes of a mech pilot. But, you don't pilot the mech from the inside in a traditional sense. You run around outside the mech and control it with RC controls. So, it's kind of like controlling a video game inside of a video game. It's honestly hard to describe, and possibly one of the most daunting things I've experienced when first picking up a game. Starting at the base level, there's two viewing modes. A first-person mode, where you look through the eyes of your pilot, who automatically tracks your mech as it moves, and the third-person view, in which you can control your pilot and move around the city to find a good vantage point of the fight. The pilot controls like a person. You walk. Oh, and also you can levitate. I know what your first thought is, why not just ride on top of your mech? Well, you will almost always get knocked off, and there's a pretty distinct chance of you being crushed by your robot when you do so. So, why not find the tallest building in the area and go there? Well, that doesn't necessarily work, because there's a lot of buildings that are perfect height to block your view of your mech, and sometimes you're in a field with no building. And if you're seeing this and have ever played an Earth Defense Force game, you're probably thinking, wow, this map looks just like the EDF map. Well, you're not wrong. It's the same map. Sandlot has just been perfecting the same city for the past 20 years. But this is not a bad thing, because a generic Japanese city is literally the perfect place for a game like this, because of two words: destructible environments. Holy shit, talk about satisfying physics. Everything is destructible. That bridge over there? Yeah, you can just stomp your mech through it. That skyscraper? Why don't you just punch your best friend's mech through it? Oh shit, you missed with your giant particle cannon and hit that giant space needle thing. Well, why don't you have a nice cinematic of it toppling to the ground? You're definitely no Evo 1, parkouring through the city and jumping into the air to pull off amazing finishers. It feels more like controlling a very drowsy, minute bull. This may sound bad, but because of this and the control scheme, it actually feels pretty great. All your movements have weight, and you can always tell exactly what you're doing. Honestly, if you don't just feel out the odd controls for yourself, you'll never really fully grasp it. Speaking of gameplay, in the campaign there are 3 robot choices with possibly the coolest anime giant robot names of all time. First, your standard fighting robot dude, Vertical Fortress Vavel. Vavel is the most standard giant fighting robot. He's big, moderately well armored, and hits kinda hard. Next off is Aerial Fortress Lagoli. Lagoli is pretty similar to Vavel. Oh yeah, but he can turn into a fucking plane, which is kinda cool shit. He has less armor and fighting power, but doesn't control like molasses. He can move decently fast, especially in plane mode. The final giant robot in the campaign mode is Geotic Fortress Glang. Glang can transform into a giant fuck-off tank and has giant fuck-off guns. All of the names of the special modes also have badass names. Vavel has Volcanic and Genesis modes. Lagoli has Fortress or Plane mode, and Demon Sword Desecrator. Glang has his Fortress mode, and Warhammer Sanctifier. These modes cannot be unlocked for some time in the campaign, but the anime level of those names are worth a mention. There are even more mechs available in the other game mode as well, with equally as kick-ass names. Well, except for Laborer. That is a pretty average name. No, I'm talking about names like Asmodeus, Banisher, and Dantarion. Honestly, I haven't spent all that much time with the campaign, though there is a lot of stuff going on in it. There are 3 playable characters, boy, man, and girl. It doesn't honestly matter who you choose, though. Multiple storylines that you can affect in the game, interactable NPCs, and etc., but it just doesn't matter in comparison to the mode I'll bring up later. Up to this point, you're probably wondering why I gave the game such high praise in the beginning, but have been talking of it as average or even a little poor. And honestly, if I had to give an unbiased review of the game, just on the campaign, probably only get like a 7 out of 10, but if you want my actual human opinion of the game because number scores are totally arbitrary and useless, I would just say I love this game, because of 2 things. First, the game is just stylistic as fuck. This dev team knew their audience. The characters were all designed by Toshihiro Kawamoto, who also designed the characters of my favorite anime of all time, Cowboy Bebop. And while the voice acting is pretty horrible, I would expect nothing less of a Sandlot game. I'd even go as far to say as it kind of adds to the charm and style of the game.
I dice bread, fry it in oil, then boil it in water. It's a proper meal. It's called bread and water soup.
Now, you are overdoing it.
It's the same as the old English dubs of the mech anime from the 70s and 80s that Robot Alchemic Drive took so much inspiration from. The second reason for my love of Robot Alchemic Drive is the Versus mode. This is couch co-op at its finest. Me and my best friend will play this game often and laugh hysterically almost the entire time. Moving the clunky giant Robo-Men through the city just to punch on each other for 5 minutes while frustratingly trying to move the pilot around the giant city just to try to get a good viewpoint to punch each other even better. Maybe your bud's flying through the air and you're a giant fuck-off tank trying to shoot them out of the sky, but they end up crashing into a tower and you have to relearn how to rotate around to fight him again, but it's too late. He's punching on you again. It's an irreverent and nonsensical experience. It doesn't matter who wins or loses, it's fun. It's an experience that isn't too common anymore. Sure, there are games like Gang Beast and Human Fall Flat, but there's something so charming about Robot Alchemic Drive. The only experience like it that I can think of right now is, well, the newest Earth Defense Force, and that's by the same developer. Maybe it's just because it's an appeal to my stupid and absurd sense of humor, but there are a few games I would rather play during a party or with my best friend than RAD. It slightly saddens me to think that there might never be another Robot Alchemic Drive, because since 2002, Earth Defense Force has been about the only thing that Sandlot has spent time or money on. But that's not bad. Earth Defense Force 4.1 is probably the only game on PS4 which I have continuously played. I guess to wrap it all up, if you want a weird and amazing experience, I cannot recommend Robot Alchemic Drive enough. If you're lucky enough to find a copy for under the Amazon price of $144 US, definitely snatch it up. There's not really any experience like it.